In February of 1959, 9 experienced hikers disappeared in the freezing mountains of the Soviet Union. Weeks later, rescuers finally found their campsite, but what they discovered made absolutely no sense. The tent had been cut open from the inside. The hikers had fled barefoot into the snow, in temperatures colder than -30 degrees Celsius. Some bodies were found nearly naked. Others had crushed skulls and broken ribs. One woman was missing her tongue, and to this day, nobody truly knows what happened on that mountain. This is the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident. The story begins in late January 1959. A group of young hikers from the Soviet Union prepared for what should have been a difficult but routine expedition through the Ural Mountains. Most of them were highly experienced. They were not amateurs. Several were certified ski hikers with years of training in surviving brutal winter conditions. The group was led by a 23-year-old engineering student named Igor Dyatlov, calm, intelligent, and respected by everyone around him. The journey they planned was considered dangerous, but achievable. Their goal was to reach a mountain known as Otorten, a remote and unforgiving area deep within the northern Ural Mountains. At the time, the region was almost completely isolated. No towns, no roads, nothing but endless snow, forests, and silence. The group originally consisted of 10 hikers, but one member became sick early into the expedition and returned home before the group entered the mountains. That decision would unknowingly save his life. The remaining 9 hikers continued deeper into the wilderness. None of them would ever return. At first, everything seemed normal. The hikers kept journals. They took photographs. They laughed, joked, and documented their adventure. Many of the recovered photos still exist today. And looking at them now feels deeply unsettling, because these young people had absolutely no idea they were walking toward their deaths. On February 1st, weather conditions began getting worse. Strong winds and heavy snow reduced visibility. The group lost their intended route and ended up near a mountain called Kolatsiakal, a name given by the indigenous Mansi people. Translated into English, it roughly means Mountain of the Dead. As night approached, Dyatlov made the decision to stop and set up camp directly on the slope of the mountain. Some experts later questioned this decision. Why camp exposed on an open mountainside instead of moving into the safety of the forest below? Nobody knows, but that night, something happened, something so terrifying that it caused all 9 hikers to flee their tent into the freezing darkness. When the hikers failed to return on schedule, rescue teams were eventually sent into the mountains. At first, nobody expected the worst. But after days of searching through snowstorms and freezing temperatures, they finally discovered the campsite. The scene was horrifying. The tent was partially collapsed beneath the snow, but the strangest detail immediately stood out. The fabric had been slashed open from the inside. Whatever frightened the hikers made them desperate to escape immediately. Even more disturbing, many of their belongings had been left behind. Boots, coats, supplies, food. The hikers had fled into one of the coldest environments on Earth. Half-dressed, some without shoes. Tracks in the snow showed that the group walked away from the tent toward a nearby forest. Not running, walking, as if they were trying to escape something carefully or quietly. The footprints continued for over a kilometer. Then the bodies began to appear. The first 2 victims were found beneath a large cedar tree near the forest edge. They were barefoot, wearing almost no clothing. Investigators believed they had attempted to start a fire before freezing to death. The branches above them were broken high up the tree, suggesting one or both of them had climbed upward, possibly trying to see the campsite, or whatever had driven them away from it. Nearby, rescuers found the body of Igor Dyatlov himself. He was lying face down in the snow, one arm stretched forward, as if he had been trying to crawl back toward the tent before collapsing. 3 more bodies were eventually discovered between the cedar tree and the campsite. All appeared to be attempting to return to the tent. None made it. Officially, investigators concluded that the first 5 hikers died from hypothermia. But the mystery was only beginning, because months later, the remaining 4 bodies were finally found beneath deep snow in a nearby ravine. And their injuries were unlike anything rescuers expected. One hiker had a fractured skull. Another suffered devastating chest injuries so severe that experts later compared the force to a car crash. Yet strangely, there were almost no external wounds, no major cuts, no signs of a violent struggle. One woman, named Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue. Parts of her lips and facial tissue were also gone. Another victim was missing eyes. At first, rumors exploded across the Soviet Union. People whispered about secret military experiments. Others believed the hikers had been attacked. Some even claimed creatures or unknown beings were responsible. And then investigators discovered something even stranger. Several pieces of clothing taken from the bodies tested positive for radiation. Suddenly, the case became even more disturbing. The Soviet government quietly closed the investigation. Their final explanation stated that the hikers died because of a compelling natural force. No further details were given. The files were sealed, and for decades, the mystery remained unsolved. Over the years, countless theories have attempted to explain what happened that night. Some are realistic, others are terrifying. One theory suggests an avalanche forced the hikers to cut their way out of the tent before fleeing downhill. But many investigators question this explanation. The slope where the tent stood did not appear steep enough for a major avalanche, and some evidence didn't fit. Another theory involves military testing. At the time, the Soviet Union frequently conducted secret experiments in remote regions. Some witnesses reported strange glowing orange lights in the sky around the same period. Could the hikers have accidentally witnessed a classified weapons test? Some believe the injuries were caused by shock waves from explosives. Others think radiation found on clothing supports the military theory. Then there are the darker explanations, paranormal theories, creatures in the forest, unknown entities. Some people believe the hikers encountered something that simply cannot be explained, because no theory fully answers every question. Why did they leave the tent without proper clothing? Why were some bodies found nearly undressed? Why did experienced hikers make decisions that seem irrational? And what caused those horrific injuries? Even after decades, the mountain refuses to give clear answers. But perhaps the most disturbing part of the entire case is how many small details still remain unexplained. When investigators examined the campsite more closely, they noticed something strange about the footprints leading away from the tent. Some prints showed bare feet, others showed only socks, and a few appeared to belong to someone wearing just a single shoe. These were experienced hikers, people trained to survive brutal winter environments. So why would they leave their shelter, half-dressed in deadly temperatures, especially at night, especially during a snowstorm? Another unsettling detail involved the condition of the tent itself. Investigators concluded that the cuts had been made from inside the tent using a knife. This meant the hikers were not trapped from the outside. They chose to escape that way. But why not simply open the entrance normally? What could create such immediate panic? Then there were the reports from search teams and witnesses. Some rescuers later claimed the atmosphere around the mountain felt deeply unsettling. Several described an unnatural silence. Others claimed they felt intense fear while searching the area. Although these accounts cannot be scientifically verified, they only added to the growing mystery. One of the strangest pieces of evidence involved the hikers' clothing. When forensic experts tested some items, they discovered traces of radioactive contamination. This immediately fueled theories involving secret Soviet military experiments. At the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union was known for conducting highly classified tests in remote locations. Some researchers believe the hikers may have accidentally wandered into a dangerous military operation, possibly involving parachute mines or experimental weapons. Supporters of this theory point to the severe internal injuries suffered by several victims. The chest trauma was described as extremely powerful, yet there were very few external wounds, almost as if the force that injured them had compressed their bodies without directly tearing the skin. Others believe infrasound may have played a role. According to this theory, powerful winds moving around the mountain created low-frequency sound waves capable of causing panic, paranoia, and psychological distress. Some scientists suggest this could explain why the hikers suddenly fled their tent in confusion and fear. But even this theory fails to answer every question, and perhaps that is why the Dyatlov Pass incident continues to fascinate people decades later, because no explanation feels complete. Every answer seems to create even more questions, and the deeper people investigate the case, the stranger it becomes. In recent years, Russian authorities reopened the case. Modern investigators attempted to recreate the events using new technology and scientific models. Their conclusion, once again, pointed toward an avalanche-like snow collapse. According to this theory, pressure from heavy snow forced the hikers to evacuate the tent quickly. Disoriented in darkness and blizzard conditions, they became separated and eventually died from exposure. Some experts accepted this explanation. Others did not. Critics argue it still fails to explain several strange details, especially the severity of the injuries. To this day, debate continues online, in documentaries, and among investigators around the world. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in modern history, because despite decades of investigation, nobody truly knows what terrified those hikers on that frozen mountain. 9 people entered the mountains in the winter of 1959. Only their frozen bodies returned. No survivors, no witnesses, only questions. Questions that have haunted investigators for more than 60 years. And somewhere beneath the endless snow of Dyatlov Pass, the truth may still remain buried forever.